Yeah, so for Google, there was first a test, a coding on or an online coding test, and the test. These are a series of APEC tests. That's for university recruitment, and you can for Google the best part is that you can view the past year's test and the code jams which have happened. So how I practiced for it, you have on Google site a lot of tests like these, so I used to practice that way, and they are so there are four questions in it, and it ranges from easy to a little difficult, and the last ones are difficult. But this time I gave the APEC test. I guess I gave the APEC test D, and it was so there were four tests conducted throughout the year, and we had to give APEC test D, and D was easiest of the all four, and the questions are general. I mean, some will check. In some cases, the algorithm is just that any layman would know what the algorithm is, and you just have to code it up. In others, you have to think and then decide. And it was a 3 hour test, and most of the people who were selected had done all the four questions in the test. If you have done three questions, you're not selected. And I guess 20 to 25 students were selected, and only computer science students they had sat for the test. And after the test, yes, we had 3 rounds of interview on December 1. So the rounds, Google conducts one of the best interviews I have seen so far. In my first interview, there is no hierarchy, as in there is a panel of, they had almost 8 to 10 people who had come from Google Mountain View, I guess, and India plus Mountain View, and so any three of them will conduct your interview. So there is no hierarchy, which one is difficult or something. In my first interview, the first question was based. It was a very. I didn't even realize that she had started asking the questions. So we started with a normal hi, hello, and what my internship was and stuff. Then she just said that I'm working in this in this domain in Google, and I'm working on Google TV service, something she said. And then you have to, let's say there's a problem and I am facing, which was a very general problem, you would understand that. And then eventually we went into the technical, like how will this network work, how will TCP work, what is the problem with TCP. So I wasn't expecting any question from computer networks, but my first question was in computer networks. So you really have to be good with all the courses you have done so far. That was my first question, and the second question was a general coding question, where she asked me a solution for a problem, and if you're good with data structures and all, you will be able, general algorithm design, you're good at it, you will be able to do that. That was my first round. In the second round of interview at Google, it was a very general problem, like if you have, I don't remember the specifics, but it was like you have to allot numbers to the cars, and there's a general rule which you have to follow. How will you allot? So first you give a brute force answer to it, which is order, let's say n cube or in something, which is very not that good. Then you gradually, she says, okay, what if I put this constraint, how is your solution be affected? What if I put this constraint? So the entire interview was based on just one question, which just evolved in the difficulty levels, and you had to explain your solution, then code it up. You have to explain your solution and code it up. So it went that way, and in the end, I don't think it had a very specific answer to there was no specific answer to the question, because when I came out and I discussed with people about how they answered that question, everyone had a very different answer, and all were all were smart answers. I cannot say that one was not good as other. That was the second round. And in the third round of interview was very good. That was more of a spontaneous rapid fire. What if I change this, or how will your thing change, and is it the best you can come up with? Then I have to think. Then he tells me this is not the best you have come up with. Then you think on those lines. Then he'll say, you give me an order n square solution and not an order n cube. Can you improve it further? That sort of thing. So you keep on doing that, and eventually, and it was more of a puzzle thing. The third interview was that, and that was my third round. And then I had a 5-10 minutes just in HR. I talked to the HR outside, who asked me generally, how are your internships, because my internship was in Microsoft, I think. So every interview was interested in knowing what the internship was, and how are your internships, how was the experience and stuff. I think that was all for Google. And uh, and Facebook has a very very similar, I think Facebook and Google have very similar interviews. There was a test initially, a coding online test, and it had two questions, whereas Google had four questions. Facebook test was also of the same difficulty level, And then I had 3 rounds of interview with Facebook. Facebook is more of a, they'll just ask you one question throughout a 1 hour interview, and they're going to really check how your brain processes, how you go. If you go straight to the answer, you are not getting any points for it. You had to go in the sideways, then you have to hit a wall and come back when you realize that that solution is not going to work there. So Facebook, I can tell you what the exact questions were. My first, so there's this KMP algorithm which for string searching that's there in computer science. They asked me a question which required you to modify KMP. KMP is itself a little difficult and not many people understand the algorithm, I guess. So I think a lot of people in our department got out from the first round for the reason they couldn't think of a modified KMP approach. And you didn't have to code it up because it was a little difficult, so they just asked you to explain everything, with give your cases, explain me on this test case how your algorithm will work. That was my first round. And second round was a simulation question. You just had to simulate something. That's how you generally, how you code up games and stuff, how you simulate. I think it just checked how you simulated what will happen if corner cases, what will happen if this, there's a mice question, if there are rats entering into your system and there's again a rule of them to go out, how are you going to simulate this, how will you eventually what will be the complexity, the time and the space complexity of your algorithm. That is one thing that every interviewer asks you the algorithm and then asks you to state the complexity of your algorithm. So that was my second round with Facebook. Third round with Facebook was a very tricky question because it was the final round and they had to decide. We had just 4 people left in the third round, and the third round, and the answer to the question was topological sort. So it was a complex question. It takes you at least 15 minutes to just understand the question, what he's asking you to do. And once you have understood the question, it clicks you that it's a topological sort question, and then you code it up and he gives you that. And that guy only asked me some general HR stuff in the last 10 minutes. So you have very small HR interview in these companies, in companies like Facebook, Google. So, and the last 10 minutes was this HR thing where he generally asked me about, again, about my Microsoft internship and stuff. I think that was all. That was my experience on day one with Facebook and Google. I think how I prepared for these. So first, in the first thing is that we have to clear these tests, which happen in October, September around. For these tests, you have to be really fast in coding and stuff. And since I don't think in computer science department you require to be a very good coder. You have to be good with your courses on networks and operating systems. So you have to explicitly give time out of your schedule to prepare for coding. And since I was also aiming for ACM ICPC and I went for that competition in December, so I was preparing from forums like CodeChef, Top Coder, Career Cup, and you have a lot of questions there. And I think if you keep practicing and submitting, I think that's the way you have to go about these tests. And if you're good at it, you're doing coding questions eventually over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you'll be able to qualify for these tests. And once the tests were done and I was qualified for the test from at Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, then you have to prepare for the interviews. In the interviews, you never know what happens. Either your interview can be purely coding based, but as I said in Google, I didn't expect that a networks question would be asked. So you have to be good with your courses as well because you have to be on safer side. So I think I revised my just overview. I had an overview of my previous courses on networks, operating systems, computer architecture, all these courses you have to be good at. And I revised those sort of things. And of course, my coding skills were good because I actually gave the test well. And I think then you are done for the interviews. We don't have to much concentrate on how our communication skills is, though it does matter, but I think that's a very secondary thing. So you have to be, and your CGPA doesn't matter that much if you're good at your courses, because they want you to be good in some courses which they check during the interviews. So I think that's how it was. And